Welcome to Alter. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. This podcast explores the practice of transformation as a conversation between hustle and flow. Altering, changing, growing, becoming, and altering, offering, surrendering, opening to divine conspiracy. It's the dance of the leader, athlete, artist, entrepreneur, committed not just to optimal expression, but to exceptional being. So here are adventures in alignment and conspiracy, awake to all the grit, dirt, and complexity of our world, alert to the graces that come alongside the struggle, the hustle, a cocktail of soul food, new rhythms, and street wisdom, encouragement, an infusion of courage for the moments you need it most. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. Let's alter together. A few announcements, friends, I am so excited about. First, the Envision Planner, which I just launched last month. Here's the best news. This planner is undated, so you can begin anytime. As I like to remind myself and us, you can have a New Year's Day any day you want one. Any day you decide today is New Year's Day. You can start afresh. If you want a tool to soulfully and intentionally design this next 90-day season of your life, starting whenever you want it to, Envision is my gift to you. It's been so exciting to see this planner go out into the world and inspire so many new dreams and paths toward them for myself as well. Just having this beautiful beginning to my day, just 5 minutes to get clear, get intentional, and off of my phone. Really important, I think, to start to sketch out what the day looks like and begin in gratitude and vision. So powerful. I've loved hearing the stories of how it's resetting the way you design your days as well. It's available at NicoleMeline.com. Also, 2 Alter Journey retreats are coming up. Tulum next month, February 19th through 23rd, and there's just a few more spaces open. Tulum is magical. It is Yogi Disneyland. It's white sand beaches. It is truly aquamarine waters, and it just draws some of the most heart-centered, heartward people from all over the world. So it is an incredible gathering place of our tribe. So if that calls to you, and especially if you are in the Northeast, as I am recording this podcast today from Brooklyn, Tulum is sounding pretty fantastic. So details for that are also on my website. There are also a few spaces open for the Montana retreat, May 30th through June 3rd. It is called Big Sky Country for a reason. This is the 4th retreat that I've done in Montana because I'm in love with it. It is magical. We do a day in Yellowstone, so you'll get to experience this truly other world. It's like another planet. There are rainbow cauldrons. I'm just going to leave it at that. Real natural rainbow cauldrons in the earth. It's real. You need to see it. So you're invited to both of these adventures, and all of the details are at NicoleMeline.com/retreats. Also, I am gearing up to introduce Weighty, a revolution in our relationship to weight and the ways we nourish ourselves and fuel our purpose. So if you'd like to join this experience starting in March, sign up for more information at NicoleMeline.com/weighty. And I haven't done this before, but I'm going to share a review of this podcast on iTunes for a few reasons. First, if this podcast inspires you, a way you can participate in that exchange is to rate and review it on iTunes. And that is so the vision for this podcast, is that it would be a true conversation, an exchange, literally a campfire that's sending up smoke signals, that is gathering like-hearted people together. So not only does your review help the podcast become more visible in search results, but if you scroll through some of those reviews, you can connect with like-hearted people literally around the world, which is pretty amazing. To leave a review for the podcast on iTunes will take you less than 1 minute, maybe 15 seconds. You could actually leave a review right now as you're listening. I read every single one of these reviews as I think about you and topics and questions you're interested in exploring. So here's a voice from our tribe. I picked this one because the author's name is Forever Exploring, which definitely fits the theme of today's episode. The inspiration and different perspectives and thought-provoking questions and the guests' gritty stories, amen to that, on this podcast will inspire you to alter. What a perfect name for this podcast. Great for anyone willing to listen and reflect, looking for a way to reconnect or alter their thoughts or lives. Leaves you with a feeling that nothing is impossible, to find grace within the struggles, and to move forward with optimism and hope for a better day, week, future for everyone. That is absolutely the vision and the hope that I bring into every single one of these episodes. So thank you so much for ever exploring. I love that this podcast is turning you outward, first inward, but then outward into your world. Not just toward a brighter future for yourself, but for everyone. So that energizes me in this project for sure. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to energize your work in the world. Friends, let's take a journey. The poet T.S. Eliot is one of my lifelong lanterns. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1948 for a little book, a little cycle of poems called Four Quartets. Please take this little book with you somewhere. The 4 poems are equal parts comfort and mystery, familiarity and awe, and a coming to terms with the mystery and sacredness of our ordinary places and spaces. I'll put a link to the book for sure on the episode show notes. A Heartland America expatriate, Eliot had traveled all over the world and settled ultimately in England. This little book is a sort of love poem to 4 ordinary places that had been sites of unexpected transcendence for him over the course of his life. Moments when the border between heaven and earth became hazy. And in that way, these poems are a way of recognizing how layered any place, any moment is, with the possibility of epiphany, which is another way of saying revelation. The last poem in the cycle, my favorite, is called Little Gidding. And the more I travel, these lines just become more true. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time. This is the heart of pilgrimage. It's why I travel, to come home. To myself, first of all, to my own heart, to understand what is home, what feels like home, what endures as home, regardless of how life changes, and to be more awake and alive and in wonder to the familiar. Poetry is its own kind of travel. Like travel, the task of poetry is to make strange, to infuse and charge with wonder, to remind us how weird and wonderful, full of wonder this world is. I want to talk about travel today. A really important question I love to ask is where or how do you want to adventure? How do you want to be disrupted this year? How are you opening yourself up to wilderness, to curiosity, which is the much more thrilling antidote to certainty? Why travel? Can travel be a spiritual discipline? What does modern pilgrimage look like? I'm just back from a journey through Patagonia. I shared moments of it on Instagram and saved the story there if you want a taste of this magical place. It's not a country or a region even. There's 100 answers to where it starts or ends. It's mostly unfarmable, unranchable. It's resisted colonization, comprehension. The word Patagonia has always sounded to me like far away, a kingdom of wind, of extremes, desert steppe for miles and miles of silence. A few weathered plywood estancias, oddly, rightly, all light blue. The wind shrieks through. Plains jut up into jagged peaks, buttes, mesas, each grounds for ceremony. Dynamic, eroding, amassing, it resists language, names, maps, a place to kneel, maybe, dance. Explorers have always honored it as wilderness that expands imagination, calling it a land of giants, Patagons, the tall, big-footed indigenous people it shaped. Translated another way, my favorite, the word Patagonia fits its spirit, meaning a roaring. I climbed a lot of mountains in Patagonia. I fell in love with gaucho culture, weathered earthwise cowboys in civilized berets, and the wild horses who rule it. I also fell in love with Patagonian refugios, tiny shelters on the top of mountains, sometimes ruckus bars you'd round the corner after climbing up boulders for a mile with barely a trail, and all of a sudden a little wood and stone cabin on the side of a cliff with the Beatles blaring through the windows, along with the smell of the best empanada you'll ever have in your life. We travel to believe in refuge, to become refugees, to abandon ourselves to the care of the world, to the care of the other, to be made stranger by it, to be made less estranged from each other. David Whyte is an English-Irish poet who writes a lot about the possibility of nomadic belonging, of finding ourselves as we are lost, of the road unfolding somehow both away and toward home. In a book appropriately called Pilgrim, this poem, Refuge. Sometimes a nook, a wall half down, a swerve in the path where the breeze can't catch you. Other times a made shelter, a shepherd's build up of flat stones curved to keep the wind off. Once, at the top of a pass, it was a cave in the mountain rock taking you in from the swirl and eddy of snow and the killing cold so you could live to the gray, blank dawn. Then in Galicia, it was a breath of warmth from the kitchen door, palatial with light, and a daughter's smile. The family behind, asking you in as if to say, of all shelter, traveler, you'll ever find on the road, even with those you know, the stranger's love is best of all. That's been my experience over and over again traveling, is to be taken in by the stranger, to be made less estranged to each other, and in the same moment to become stranger to myself, to constantly be surprised by the world and by our kinship with each other. I love that the word kind has at its root kin. To be kind to someone is to recognize that we're kin, we're family, regardless of how radically different our worlds, our contexts, our upbringing, our beliefs are, that at our core, we're so much more alike than we are different, but that those differences are worth leaning into. They're worth acknowledging and being sheltered by, and in that, being changed. I'm thinking about the upcoming altar retreats I'm leading this winter and spring to Tulum and Montana. I'm thinking about how important this idea of traveling through somewhere, some experience is, through as opposed to travel through a place allows your heart, your body to be marked by it, tattooed. My Patagonia adventure was long dreamed, but short planned. And one of the lessons of this trip was perfect timing, synchronicity, over and over again. When we open up to, invite, and turn our attention to flow, to divine conspiracy, we'll experience more of it. We'll see how spirit is in on it. We'll become attuned to wonder. I've always been fascinated by the tradition of pilgrimage, a journey shaped with intention, but also intentionally open-ended, unsure of its geographic and spiritual twists, open to possibility. A time to make space in life for transformation, inspiration, redirection, to be disrupted, decentered by the size and strangeness of the world, by artistry and traditions and flavors unimagined, to discover and explore deep strangeness, to be recognized, maybe even adopted by another world, to feel unknown, even to ourselves, and then to feel our way back home with all senses ignited and know it for the first time, to be renamed, revised, revived. My life has been shaped by these kind of journeys, by stepping out of the familiar and routine to give time and space for fresh vision. I've been intentional about journeying, pilgrimaging at moments of transition from a relationship, from a previous chapter, from a past job, from a moment of uncertainty toward another moment of uncertainty, because these kinds of journeys have a certain magic to them. Stepping out of the familiar and routine to give space and time for fresh vision, for the heart to open, for attention to sharpen, to get a panoramic view of the map of my life at a given moment, to understand how past chapters have led to this and where the future calls, to hear what the heart demands. We can find this kind of perspective in moments of prayerful meditation on a yoga mat or in an ecstatic sweat, for sure, here, now. But deep work, deep knowing, deep transformation can unfold over the course of a journey away from our lives and the work we're building, so we can return or swerve more fully into ourselves. As T.S. Eliot puts it, the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time. I founded Altar Journeys because of how travel has always been for me this form of pilgrimage, a time of radical growth in my relationship to God, to my own heart, to strangers who become less strange. I wanted to bring this experience of travel as soulful adventure, as journeys around the world that are less a retreat and more an advance, that provide fresh views, vision, experiences, relationships, and tools to help you come home to yourself most authentically. And I love the electric tension between those two words, the seeming contradiction, nomadic, belonging, movement, and home. Travel helps us understand that we're all nomads, that life is dynamic. It's not guaranteed. It's not a given. It's a gift. We can be friends of change, which is the only constant. That even though we're made to crave stability and comfort and home, the more we can learn to cultivate the inside of our own hearts and spirits, regardless of our environment, the more peace we have. I think of my meditation and movement practice Altar as a practice of nomadic belonging, of cultivating, reestablishing home inside my heart, my body, my breath on a daily basis. And I love the image of a yoga mat as a kind of 6 by 2 foot home, a kind of tent you can step into anywhere. There's an old route that runs through northern Spain called the Camino de Santiago. For thousands of years, it's been a road worn by pilgrimage. People from everywhere taking time out of their regular lives to walk or run or bicycle to an altar that's become a shrine, that's become a cathedral. They say the body of St. James was buried here 2,000 years ago. What fascinates me about its enduring tradition is that the church would prescribe pilgrimage as an indulgence. Indulgences are pretty complicated and effed up theological formulas, a way of buying grace, which can't be bought. But penance is an idea we might play with a little bit. It has in it the idea of a journey. Penance has that word repentance at the root, which means a turning, a reorienting, a way that must be traveled when we've become aware we've gone wrong. There's something about a long physical journey outside our tangled situations that can transform us. To complete the pilgrimage to Santiago, a pilgrim has to have walked at least 100 kilometers to the Church of Compostela, where they can receive a certificate that acknowledges, are you ready for it? Authentic visitation to all the faithful and to pilgrims from all over the earth who come with devout affection or for the sake of a vow to the shrine of our apostle, St. James, the patron and protector of Spain. I want to drop that little phrase one more time. Who come with devout affection or for the sake of a vow. I love that little phrase that sneaks in there. With devout affection or for the sake of a vow. Which means you might not feel this. You might not have pilgrimaged full of faith and belief. Maybe you did it for the sake of something that felt holy, bigger than you can fully understand, something that felt worth journeying in honor of, some kind of mysterious transformation you knew you needed but couldn't name. You wanted to journey toward. The official Compostela certificate goes on to say, the Holy Apostolic Metropolitan Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela expresses its warm welcome to the tomb of the Apostle St. James the Greater and wishes that the Holy Apostle may grant to you, in abundance, the graces of pilgrimage. The graces of pilgrimage. Yep. Most people who walk the Santiago pilgrimage walk much longer than the 100 kilometers. They're much longer routes and take about 40 days to do it. That's a long time. It's literally indulgent. I love the rebellion of that. Stepping out of the web of relationships and technology and economy that forms our everyday lives and just walking an old road through the countryside for 40 days. It's radical. It gets to the core of you. Often pilgrims on the Camino or other long hikes like the Appalachian or Pacific Crest Trail choose a trail name for themselves that's different from the name they begin with to honor that this journey, this pilgrimage, is going to reshape them. Do you know Cheryl Strayed's great book, which Reese Witherspoon made a great movie of, Wild? It tells the story of a woman who goes on one of these long through-likes on the Pacific Crest Trail and the ways that it renames her. On a journey like this, you can step out of your history, your story, take stock of it. We have this ancient idea in just about every culture of rites of passage, journeys that mark transitions, that shape us for a next chapter. No accident that indigenous cultures often rename someone returning from a walkabout of one kind or another. I love what the social justice activist Lisa Sharon Harper, who leads pilgrimages to sites of colonization and oppression, says about pilgrimage. It gives us the opportunity to immerse ourselves in the story of the other, to carry it in our body, to close the narrative gap between the other's story and our own. So I have a question for you. What would a pilgrimage to the most foreign culture you can imagine look like to you? To a culture whose beliefs or practices are so different from yours. By the way, that place might be down the road or the next apartment over, or it might be across the world. What would it look like for you to pilgrimage, to go in a spirit of reverence and spiritual openness and curiosity, a willingness to be changed? Sometimes we feel this call physically to go and pilgrimage to a place, to move through it, to let it move through us physically. But I don't think pilgrimage has to be physical. I think that you can take that kind of a spirit using technology mindfully, watching film about a place, reading deeply about a place with that kind of openness. Pilgrimage is an orientation of the heart, right? It's an openness, a willingness to be renamed, to be revised, to go through a transitional journey that is less about changing a place with your presence there and more about being changed, being permeated by it. Pilgrimage can be more about a time, a season set apart than a place. It can be a stretch of time that you're intentional about maybe refraining from certain practices or trying new practices, reshaping your habits, reshaping your way of being in the world. That's so much of the heart that's behind this experience that I'm shaping called HIIT, which is launching soon. It's a 28-day journey in your own home, in your own space, on your own time, but it's a time set apart. It's a time of pilgrimage. It's a time of intentional transformation. So maybe there's a place that's calling you, a place in the world that's calling you with a kind of spiritual resonance to journey to, but maybe there's other kinds of journeys that you can undertake this year, other kinds of travel, whether it's through reading or listening or watching and exploring that way, or a time of study, reflection, spiritual journeying like we're going to do together in HIIT, or a physical journey that you'll take somewhere else. One more poem from David Whyte, also from his book Pilgrim. This poem is about his own pilgrimage, his own walk down the Camino de Santiago, and about the ways a pilgrimage takes us out of life only to return it fully lit. It's called Santiago. The road seen, then not seen. The hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take. The road dropping away from you as if leaving you to walk on thin air, then catching you, holding you up when you thought you would fall. And the way forward always in the end, the way that you followed, the way that carried you into your future, that brought you to this place, no matter that it sometimes took your promise from you, no matter that it had to break your heart along the way. The sense of having walked from far inside yourself out into the revelation, to have risked yourself for something that seemed to stand both inside you and far beyond you, that called you back to the only road in the end you could follow, walking as you did in your rags of love, and speaking in the voice that by night became a prayer for safe arrival. That one day you realized that what you wanted had already happened long ago and in the dwelling place you had lived in before you began, and that every step along the way you had carried the heart and the mind and the promise that first set you off and drew you on, and that you were more marvelous in your simple wish to find a way that in the gilded roofs of any destination you could reach, as if all along you had thought the end point might be a city with golden towers and cheering crowds, and turning the corner at what you thought was the end of the road, you found just a simple reflection and a clear revelation beneath the face looking back, and beneath it another invitation, all in one glimpse, like a person and a place you had sought forever, like a broad field of freedom that beckoned you beyond, like another life, and the road still stretching on. Were you brought along in the cadence of that poem? I love that it has a kind of walk to it. It has a kind of wander to it. One phrase leading and tilting and tipping into the next and leading us forward and onward and heartward. Friends, I wish you, as the Camino certificate states, the graces of pilgrimage in whatever form that can take for you this year. I wish you some transformational travel this year to discover and explore deep strangeness, to be recognized, maybe even adopted by another world, to feel unknown even to yourself, and then to feel your way back home with all senses ignited, and to know it for the first time, to be renamed, revised, revived. And in that full spirit, I'm inviting you to join an altar journey this year. So now you know the intentionality that's behind these adventures, these soulful adventure retreats, this vision of pilgrimage, of transformational travel. As of the day I'm recording this podcast, there's still a few spaces open in the Tulum retreat next month, February 19th through 23rd, and Under Big Skies in Montana, May 30th through June 3rd. And stay tuned for a few adventures down the road. You can find all the details at NicoleMeline.com. Wherever you're wandering this week, I hope you practice nomadic belonging, heartward adventuring as we alter together. Swapping brave stories, sending up smoke signals is the vision of Alter Together, the community around this podcast, which I imagine is a kind of campfire for deepened conversations and friendships, a BS-free zone of resources, adventurous guided meditations, movement practices, live conversations, and the Alter Book Club, and other surprises I bliss out on creating for you each month. Join the party at altertogether.com, where you can find show notes, playlists, the Together community, and at Alter Together on Instagram. If you're resonating with this podcast, please rate and leave a review for it on iTunes, where you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode, or at the accompanying guided meditations that drop a few days later. I read each one of those reviews, as well as your messages and episode shares on social media. They mean the world to me. I'd love to hear what kind of hope, vision, play it's stirring in you. You can connect with me at NicoleMeline.com or on social media at Nicole Meline. So onward and upward and heartward, my friends, as we alter together.